Ano ai ke aloha ya kākou. Thank you for joining us today. In a moment, Governor Josh Green and Maui County Mayor Richard Bisson will join other government agencies, including SBA Administrator Isabel Casillas Guzman and FEMA Administrator Dan Criswell, to give a 6-month update on our collective progress in the recovery after the Maui wildfires. Facilitated questions and answers will follow promptly after remarks conclude. Without further ado, it is my privilege to introduce Governor Josh Green.
Aloha, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. 6 months ago today, we lost 100 of our loved ones in the fire, and lives of thousands more were changed forever. Hurricane-force winds, 74 miles per hour, fanned the flames across Maui, both in Lahaina and upcountry, and on Big Island, causing the worst natural disaster we've ever suffered. But people have come together. There is hope. There is compassion. And though we have not completed the recovery, of course, we have begun to heal. So one by one, we're doing what we can to help families recover, to find people homes, to remove the debris, to work with so many partners, many of whom you're going to hear from today. I want to particularly mahalo Mayor Bisson, who has been courageous and compassionate for the people of Lahaina and Maui. And we have had extraordinary support at every level of the federal government, right up on to Uncle Joe Biden, as we call him at home. He has been there for us. So we're grateful. I'm going to dive into a couple slides today to show you where we are. Without a doubt, there's a ton more work to do. But let's look at a quick overview. Let's go to the first slide here. The impact of this catastrophe was enormous. Over 13,000 people are in the community, but 9,806 individuals who survived were initially displaced. And as I mentioned, 100 of our loved ones were lost. 4,961 survivors are currently in the non-congregate shelters, the hotels. That number peaked at just under 8,000. So about 36% of those that were at one point in a hotel are now off in other homes. Incredible work across the board, from FEMA to Department of Human Services to CNHA and so many others, helping to move people forward. I'm going to break that out in a slide here, more detail in a moment. Just to show you the sheer scope of this recovery, 1.2 million meals delivered by Red Cross, who've been extraordinary partners. We have been pressing hard for short-term rentals to be converted to long-term rentals. This is an obvious central point of our effort. Right now, if you add up all of the short-term rentals and other homes that typically were not available, you can see the number is approximately 2,367 of the short-term rentals that we need have been obtained. We need another 500 or so to be converted. We're going to continue to press very hard. Bob's team, I believe, has acquired about 1,415 of these. Another 400 individual families may very well be able to return home, where their home has had water restored and power restored. So of that denominator of 3,000, it may be a little less, might be about 2,600 households. And I remind people, because this is important, when you think about what Lahaina was in the beginning, it was 561 families owning their homes and living there. And then the other 1,843 households were renting in Lahaina, to give you the scope of what we have to do to get everyone back into a more stable living situation. Let's go to the next slide. We put together a housing partnership about a month ago to demonstrate our full commitment, and we're proud of this. This is just for the short term to get individuals into a longer term housing setting so that they can heal, so they can cook together and celebrate birthdays together and prepare themselves ultimately to rebuild their homes and lives. This partnership, I don't know if it's ever been done this way before in other places, but FEMA came forward with an initial much larger number, which they have to build housing and so on. But right off the bat, $250 million to support this. State, $150 million. The county, which is wrestling with every challenge under the sun, still came forward with $40 million just for this alone. Maui Strong Hawaii Community Foundation, $50 million. CNHA, $5 million plus all of their work. And then other philanthropy, another $5 million. So $500 million right now, renting these short-term rentals into a long-term space, helping us to now acquire hundreds of homes, temporary houses, transition houses. This is what it looks like. This is what partnership looks like. And SBA, there in blue, on blue, sorry, it is semi-invisible, my fault, has given out $290 million in support, in loans, to help us rebuild. Let's go to the next slide. I think it's important for people to see how things are evolving when you have a disaster of this nature. So December and prior, as I shared, we had over 3,000 households in the NCS program, into hotels essentially. We had a few families moving into the host family program, a brilliant idea by the mayor, supported by CNHA. That's where people can go and live in a household, and monies go to that household, $500 a person, so they can live there. It helps the economy and helps that family. Non-short-term hotels, we had some additional available spaces. A few people returned to residence. We didn't have any ADUs yet. Of course, we didn't have any build yet. And then you could see, we move forward to today. As of now, we're down to 2,089 households. That's that 36% decrease from the peak. We have host family program accelerating. We have a lot of additional long-term rentals. These are the conversions. That's the 1,415 that Bob has been able to acquire through very hard work. 110 families, households, plus or minus, have been able to get back to their homes. And you can see the other programs are beginning. Look at that number, the 550 build. We have authorized 500 homes for state dollars. It's an $80 million appropriation, helped by $30 million committed by Hawaii Community Foundation and other partners. That will begin to arrive in the coming days. And you can see we are getting to a place where we balance our total number of need for households with mid to long-term support. We get to March 1st, that's when another 1,000 households we hope will have been moved from the hotels into long-term settings, condominiums and other houses. And by the time we get to summer, we hope that no one will have to be in hotels unless they truly choose to and it suits their life and the community's needs. So this is meant to show you the overview of how we're progressing. It is not perfect. It changes every moment of every day because everyone has different need. And we're trying to meet that need with our teams on a family by family approach. Next slide. A couple quick comments about housing. The housing response is growing right now from the excellent planning teams that the mayor has, our team and Luke and others. So you'll hear Josiah's name and Luke's name quite a lot along with our Haima team and James as we come through this recovery. 259 pre-disaster homeless individuals were served. That's the Pu'uhonua Onene. That was the homeless camp that we started by the airport. We've been able to get about half of all the homeless community before the disaster into a space where they can be settled and not be on the streets. I mentioned earlier the State Temporary Housing Initiative at Leali'i. These are modular homes. The price point is much more affordable than traditional building. A lot of this is evolving, but we will have our first drop in March, 270 units. And then rental assistance housing is going to continue to match needs. And we're in constant discussions with our federal partners about the right number of houses that ultimately we build, because we're not just looking at this period of time. As we transition those from hotels to intermediate housing, we also are thinking about the future. And over time, we'll need to accelerate the building of thousands of homes for our families. Next slide. These are the missions. I won't get into each of them because our partners are going to dive into a lot of this, but there you can see extraordinary work that the EPA did. Not only are they monitoring our air, but they went through all of the properties in an amazing way and quickly. So that we can begin the other process, which is the debris removal mission. That has to be done before we can rebuild at the desire of the people of Lahaina, the community. The school site is growing up from the earth. You can see that the debris removal has already been going on. They have many teams and more than 50 properties have already been fully cleared. and the Red Cross has been by us all the way. And then the last things I would highlight are to help match the philanthropic support, the tens of millions of dollars that I alluded to earlier. We authorized $100 million of TANF funds, temporary assistance for needy families. So in an ongoing fashion, when a new need arises, so that people are not forgotten, they will be able to tap into that. As of now, 4.5 million of that $100 million has been distributed. We'll go all the way to 100 million and probably beyond. The last program there is the RAP program. That is our human services program to complement the work that FEMA does when people don't qualify. Perhaps they are COFA migrants or were undocumented. We believe everyone should be housed for the good of all. And so that's to supplement the large work that they're doing. Next slide. These are our initiatives to make people whole. The 100 individuals that were lost all had families, and we have put together $175 million if they choose in a voluntary way to accept a settlement. $1.5 million would go to each family. That will launch on March 1st. That's a partnership between the mayor's team, us, HECO, Kamehameha Schools, Charter, Hawaiian Tel, and West Maui Land Company put monies into this. Mostly, in this case, it was, it was actually pretty dynamic across the board. And this fund will help people who lost a loved one or were injured severely. But going forward, we're going to also help those who lost land and lost businesses. This is just our first space where we feel we should be most compassionate. So in the course of about 3 months from March 1st, we hope to award these resources to anyone who chooses to go that way without any conflict whatsoever. We'll probably get them 5 years ahead for their personal recovery, if we can call it that. Next slide. Okay. Thank you guys for all this attention. We know it's a lot of detail, but we felt at 6 months it was very important for you to see the full scope of this recovery. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Governor Green. Up next, Maui County Mayor Richard Bisson.
Aloha mai kako. Again, on the 6-month date, our thoughts and prayers continue to be with our ohana in Lahaina. I'd like to thank all of our partners who are standing here and all of you who have been with us throughout these past 6 months. I'm here also to update. I think the governor was pretty comprehensive in what he covered. There may be a few other things. The county, we've also committed to building approximately 500 interim units, 200 right now on the West Maui side, as well as another 250 to 300 accessory dwelling units or ADUs that we've identified throughout the county. I think something I might need to clear up is that there are several efforts going on at the same time. FEMA is helping us build modular units. The state is also taking on part of that build, as well as Governor mentioned at Leali'i. And then the county is also trying to put up some building of units as well. I'd also like to recognize in particular the extraordinary work of Kuhio Lewis and the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement for their collaborative efforts with the county in housing our survivors. To date, they provided 221 household units through their host family program that was started early on in the process. Their Kako'o Maui housing program signed 47 leases, and 27 families have already moved into those units. Again, the ADU loan forgiveness program is on track. They've already approved their first 2 applicants. We'll be approving them next week. And in addition, some of you were at the press conference held that Governor referred to about a month ago. 34 of those Maui Lani Fairway units have already been on order and are on their way to Maui right now. And again, all for the work of both CNHA as well as Hawaii Community Foundation. In addition, we're working diligently on an interim housing program. We're also moving forward with our permanent housing plan. We're working with private developers for additional units on multiple projects throughout our expedited temporary structure permitting program. Maybe I can also say to that, at this 6-month point, we've stood up a brand new department in the County of Maui, the Office of Recovery, led by Josiah Nishita, Keanu Lauhi. And that department, of course, will be responsible for working with our federal and state partners to get our units built. In collaboration with the County Council, we passed Bill 131, which creates a real property tax exemption program These incentives allow short-term rental owners to convert to long-term rentals for fire survivors. I'm happy to report that as of February 5th, we've received applications for 1,396 units, of which 842 of those are in Lahaina. So again, nearly 1,400 have already shifted from short-term to long-term, which was what we were hoping to see happen. I also want to give recognition to the Global Empowerment Mission, or GEM, that's also housed 598 households in short-term housing as well. We're in the process of working with our state legislators and the governor through the 2024 legislative session to secure additional infrastructure funding and resources that we need to make sure that every member of our community can have a place to call home. Our debris removal remains a critical component for returning survivors to their property. And as of this morning, there are 60 properties that have been cleared, 71 in progress, and we're up to 15 teams, and we're trying to get that to 25, between 25 and 30 teams working simultaneously out in Lahaina. I also want to emphasize the mental health support that we are in need of. The lack of stable housing has obviously been a very major source of anxiety for our displaced residents, especially for our families with children. And so for some of our residents, the housing issues have just compounded that trauma that they've already experienced, and has created in some cases, depression. And so we want to know that that's not something that we take lightly. We thank again the governor and our partners who have stood with us alongside this process of recovery. And I want every survivor to know that we are not going to rest until we've gotten each one of them the care that they need and they seek. There is help available. One way to find available counseling at no cost is through our Maui Recovers website at mauirecovers.org /mental health. We've also been working collaboratively with community organizations to provide programs in the very, very near future for our Keiki and Kupuna to create a new resiliency hub to assist with basic needs such as food and household supplies. And finally, in closing, I'm incredibly appreciative of the continuous outpouring of aloha that we have received from across our pai'aina and from around the world. From day one, Maui has truly felt the embrace of so many. The care and resilience of our community, paired with the support of our federal, state, and local partners through this disaster, has been unwavering. As we look forward, we remain acutely focused on prioritizing the mental health and well-being of our survivors and our shared commitment to provide a place for them to call home. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Mayor Bisson. Up next, SBA Administrator and member of President Biden's cabinet, Isabel Casillas Guzman.
Thank you so much. Aloha, everyone. Thank you so much to the governor and the mayor, because I think leadership matters. The ability to collaborate delivers results. And we've seen that in the federal partnerships and state and local partnerships that we've been able to deploy. You know, yesterday, the White House issued a fact sheet and demonstrating again, they're doubling down on a commitment to making sure that it does everything in its power across the whole of government approach to helping Maui recover and rebuild at the direction of the people of Maui. And the SBA is part of the family of agencies that focuses on making sure that communities recover, recognizing that small businesses have a unique role in neighborhoods and communities. They create 2/3 of net new jobs. They power nearly half of our economy in jobs and output. We want to make sure that the SBA stands ready in a whole of government approach as well to help communities recover. And it's not just the small businesses, but we focus on the small businesses and the communities they serve, those customers and employees who visit those small businesses. And as a result, as the governor has said, part of the White House's announcement is that there's been over $330 million in grants and disaster loans deployed here. And we want to make sure that we continue to deliver. SBA in particular has deployed over $290 million to businesses and homeowners and renters so that they can start to plan and recover and rebuild, getting some immediate personal property dollars to support them, as well as funds for those homeowners to rebuild in the future and funds for the businesses to deal with the disruption. I want to make sure that there's continued coverage and a story there about what small businesses can continue to do to get support from the SBA. We remain here with over 8 centers supporting disaster survivors with SBA assistance. These are affordable, long-term, 30-year loans, less than 4%, 2.375% for individuals. That's in this marketplace, very affordable capital. And we've bent over backwards to make sure that we're as flexible as possible, recognizing that this is a long-term build, deferring payments on interest and deferring interest, for 12 months, automatically helping them with their other loans from the SBA, as well as making sure that they can disperse this capital for up to 24 months. These are changes at the SBA at the direction of President Biden's customer-centric approach to making sure that disaster survivors get the support that they need with compassion from the federal government. And so I'm pleased to join again with FEMA, as we did several months ago, 6 months ago, to make sure that the SBA on the ground is here to continue to support our businesses, our nonprofits, as well as our residents, these homeowners and individual renters as they look to recover. And one other final note is just that this is a story as well about the whole of government really deploying locally in a way that impacts small businesses. There have been over $300 million in contracts awarded so far. Federal government usually performs at about a 26.5% to small businesses. In this case, it's been over 83% of those contracts going to small businesses, a significant number of it, $240 million to businesses on the various islands of Hawaii and locally here in Maui. And so across these agencies behind me, they've really deployed to make sure that small businesses are getting the economic development and support with revenues to continue to thrive. So thank you so much for having us, and I hope the word continues to get out there that SBA loans are still available. We will work with you on the ground, meet you where you are to help you support you during this time. Thank you.
Mahalo, Administrator Guzman. Up next, FEMA Administrator Deanne Criswell.
Thank you, and aloha. I just want to start out by thanking Administrator Guzman for joining us here again today. She's been such a great colleague and came out with me on our first trip here 6 months ago. And I think, as you've heard already, this is really a demonstration of a true partnership across all of our federal agencies, our nonprofits, the private sector, working at the direction of the mayor and the governor. And so again, on behalf of President Biden and the entire Biden-Harris administration, I just want the people of Maui to know that we continue to stand with you each and every day, and we will continue to support you in this recovery for as long as it takes. Governor Green and Mayor Bisson, thank you again for your continued partnership. And I know that these past 6 months have been challenging at times, but I look forward to continuing to be at your side and supporting you throughout these recovery efforts. Before I get into a couple of the updates and the progress that we've made so far on some of our long-term recovery efforts, I also want to take a moment to just reflect on the people who tragically lost their lives, the 100 people who tragically lost their lives, families whose lives have been forever changed, and a community who has lost their friends, who've lost their loved ones. The community still lives. We will rebuild the community. But my heart still goes out to all of those who have been impacted by this horrific event. The stories that you shared with me 6 months ago still stay with me. I still remember going to one of the shelters with the Red Cross and watching one of our Red Cross staff help a young boy pick out a backpack and some clothing so he could go to school the next day, and how excited he was for the support that he was getting. Those are the stories of support that really stay with me. Those are the stories of hope that I know that this community continues to experience. And I want to thank all of the first responders, the emergency officials, and all of the local leaders who have truly been working around the clock to help people in this transition to long-term recovery. I just had an opportunity to get an update from a long-term recovery group and through our recovery support functions, which represent agencies across the federal government. And what I can tell you from that meeting is you do have the entire federal government here to support you in a number of ways. And while they talked about their accomplishments, we also know that there are still challenges, and we are committed to continuing to work together through those challenges. Emergency response and recovery, it takes the whole community. And we could not perform our mission without the support and the efforts of our non-governmental partners. And I want to recognize the nonprofit community and the volunteer organizations that have been tireless in their efforts to take care of people that have been impacted by these fires. Especially the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement, the Hawaii Community Foundation, the American Red Cross, the United Way, and all of the members of the Maui community organizations active in disasters. Thank you for your dedication, for your partnership, and for your commitment to putting people first. And lastly, I want to thank the people of Maui, the people of Lahaina, and the people of Kula, who have educated us and have helped us better understand how we can best support you. Because of your efforts, we have been able to reach a new phase of our recovery mission. So real quickly, I'll give you some updates on some of the things that we're going to do, that we've been doing so far. So 6 months after the wildfires came through this town, we've had excavators and bulldozers that have been there still clearing these lots today. And I'm looking forward to being able to see some of the progress later today. We've had environmental crews that are keeping tabs on air, water, and oil samples. And as we continue to support this critical work, we're also committed to being mindful of how we are preserving Lahaina's culture and sense of community. So while we are quickly working to clear all of the debris, we are also being careful to identify and protect any artifacts that we find with the support of cultural monitors that are actively participating in the debris removal process. There have been more than 180 Red Cross disaster responders that are also here working to get survivors the help that they need as quickly as possible. More than 400 federal personnel remain on the ground, with over 230 in Maui alone, assisting residents in their greatest time of need. And to date, the Biden-Harris administration has approved nearly $44 million in assistance to over 7,000 households. And in the wake of the wildfires, President Biden authorized 100% federal funding for debris removal for 180 days and 100% federal funding for emergency protective measures for 90 days, both for periods of the state's choosing within the first 270 days. The president's declaration allowed FEMA to mobilize the entire federal family to help respond. And to date, more than $1.2 billion has been provided to federal agencies to help Hawaii respond and recover. Some of the things include the Environmental Protection Agency, which has removed damaged household appliances, lithium batteries, and other hazardous materials from the 5 square mile area of the Lahaina burn zone. The U.S. Coast Guard, which has raised 96 boats from the harbor, including a commercial submarine. And the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, which has loaded tightly wrapped debris for removal. The Army Corps has also used FEMA funding to rapidly compensate the installation of a temporary school to house students from the King Kamehameha Elementary School, which was destroyed in the fire. The temporary school on the north side of Lahaina is nearing completion, only 3 months after the work began, and classes are expected to start on April 1st, and I'm looking forward to seeing that later. And I'm excited to announce today that we are expediting $44 million in funding for a new permanent school in partnership with the Hawaii Department of Education. We look forward to working with the state of Hawaii as you continue to rebuild King Kamehameha Elementary School and are looking forward to seeing the students in their new classrooms. It's a huge step forward, but we know that we have more work to do, especially because there are still people who are seeking long-term housing placement, especially here on Maui. Under the direct lease program, FEMA contracts with owners of short-term vacation rental units that can be leased for survivors. We pay these property owners directly. And as you heard from the governor, through this program, we have secured over 1,400 of these leased properties to date for survivors. And over 160 households have already been placed into temporary homes. And we are working hard to place the remaining households in these units as quickly as possible. So in closing, I just want the people of Maui to hear it from me again. We are here to help you. We want to help you. And if we haven't been able to reach you yet, please contact us and let us know that you need help. We are here for you. Tomorrow is a day that you need to remember. February 9th is the last day for you to register for our individual assistance program. So if you haven't done so already and you need assistance, please visit www.disasterassistance.gov, or you can call 1-800-621-3362 to register for that assistance. And if you received a decision from us that maybe you don't agree with, please, we encourage you to appeal that decision. Come into one of our disaster recovery centers and talk to a FEMA representative about your specific case. We know that everybody's situation is unique to them. And maybe there's just a little bit more information that we need on your application in order to push it through. So I encourage you to please come in and sit down and talk with one of our representatives if you've received a decision that hasn't given you everything you think you might need. And we also continue to have FEMA and our SBA partners at our joint disaster recovery centers, where people can speak with all kinds of different specialists, to include FEMA, continue to register for assistance through tomorrow, and get in touch with other organizations as needed. As I said from the beginning, that this is going to be a long recovery, but we will be here every step of the way to help you through it. And so with that, we will continue to help this community rebuild stronger and in a way that makes you more resilient for the future. Thank you.
Mahalo, Administrator Criswell. Next, please welcome HUD Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Office of Community and Planning Development, Marian McFadden.
In working with disaster-impacted communities all over the country, I've certainly learned that no two places are the same, but the commonality is that everyone who's impacted by disasters and displaced from their homes is seeking a safe and secure place to call home. On behalf of HUD Secretary Marcia Fudge and the Deputy Secretary Adrian Todman, I'm here to express our continued support for the housing recovery of Maui. We have no higher priority at HUD. HUD is going to continue to work alongside our partners, including FEMA, the SBA, EPA, USDA, and the Army Corps of Engineers, to ensure that Maui is able to rebuild. We are providing teams on the ground. We're providing technical support to understand the requirements. And in as much as we provide funding every year to the state and to the county, we have provided maximum flexibility around funds that are already here so that they can meet local recovery needs. To help fill the gaps that are left in federal assistance by other programs, we recently launched a program called Rapid Unsheltered Survivor Housing, or the RUSH program, and we announced in August $1.3 million for Maui County residents who were experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness before the disaster. They deserve the same quality of recovery as everyone else because they suffer the same challenges in rebuilding their lives after the disaster. Often after the worst disasters, Congress appropriates disaster recovery funding to HUD for low and moderate income people who may not qualify for SBA loans or other assistance, and that funding can provide support for housing, for small businesses, and for infrastructure. We have not yet received any funding from Congress for that purpose, but that has not stopped us from doing educational events and providing support so that people understand if that funding arrives, how it can be used, and we don't waste time. What is special about that funding is that it heavily relies on community engagement. So we are looking forward to a day when we can announce that funding here and provide that level of support, but we're not waiting. When we're working apart, it takes longer to achieve recovery, so we're committed to staying braided tightly with our federal partners, with the state, with the county, with nonprofit leaders, and with residents, because we really want to do everything we can to support the recovery.
Mahalo, Deputy Assistant Secretary McFadden. Finally, I'd like to introduce the EPA Deputy Regional Administrator, Cherie Peterson.
Aloha. It is EPA's privilege to mark the 6-month anniversary of this tragedy. We are so grateful to have been able to work alongside the local people of Hawaii, the mayor, our federal family, and the governor to do the work that we had to do. To date, we have removed over 200 tons of hazardous material from the burn area. This was done in concert with our tireless cultural monitors, making sure that we are protecting all the cultural resources that are there. And we're grateful that the Army Corps of Engineers is going to continue that partnership with the cultural monitors. They've also introduced traditions that have been very meaningful to all of our staff. The morning and evening poules have become a critical part of what we do. One unexpected part of this mission was removal and processing of over 30 tons of lithium-ion batteries that are highly flammable. And we were able to do that in partnership with the local Hawaiian Fire Department, as well as other industry leaders. So we're very grateful that was able to happen. Right now, we're in a transition from immediate emergency response to more response and recovery. And we are focused on drinking water and wastewater and restoring the service that is needed for so that folks can reoccupy their houses. To start with wastewater, our first mission is to inspect and clear over 95,000 linear feet of sewer line utilities. And we have been there for 4 days, and we have already completed almost 20% of that mission. We will be clearing the sewage pipes as well as inspecting them. And we are going to meet our timeline of 30 days. Our second focus is on drinking water and drinking water utilities. The wildfire caused widespread damage, heat-induced damage to these pipes, as well as loss of pressure, which could have caused volatile compounds to be introduced to the pipes. We will be sampling over 2,000 pipes to ensure that if there are contaminants there, they will be isolated from the rest of the system, and we can protect the water system. EPA also supports the long-term sustainable recovery with the federal interagency team. We have had a sustainability advisor as well as a drinking and wastewater advisor on the ground since day one. Finally, we are leading the effort with the rest of the federal family to determine if we can quickly bring sewer connections to the Wakuli Terrace. If we are able to be successful, we will be able to protect both the families and the nearshore environment in a way that was unaffordable previously. This highlights the Biden-Harris administration commitment to prioritizing underserved communities. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Administrator Peterson. Now I would like to welcome questions from the media. In the spirit of allowing everyone in attendance the time to ask a question, we kindly request your kokua in raising one initial question per media outlet. You are welcome to ask additional questions after all media outlets have asked their first question. I'm going to start today with Maui-based media or Maui-born reporters. So we'll start with Wendy Osher of PMG.
Thank you. This question is for the governor. With the deadline approaching for the moratorium that you mentioned, do you feel that you are where you would hope to be, and do you think it's going to be necessary?
Wendy's question is regarding an update on the moratorium as it relates to the timeline.
Thank you. Because of the incredible success of the mayor's program and the effort that FEMA and DHS have done, it's not likely we'll need the moratorium, and we will meet our needs by March 1st. The number of housing units will meet the need that the families have at this pace. Going forward, we're going to continue to review the landscape of long-term rentals and short-term rentals in our state. It's now become clear that this is a statewide issue highlighted by the crisis in Maui. We've asked the legislature, which is in session right now, to do all that it can to both provide incentives and allow me to bring significant enforcement to bear to get people to move from short-term rentals to long-term rentals. We have 90,000 short-term rentals in our state. 75,000 of those are illegal. On Maui alone, we've got 31,000 short-term rentals. And though we appear to have enough to take care of those families that were displaced, we still have a housing crisis. So expect this to be a long-term policy question for us to move tens of thousands of short-term rentals into local families' possession.
Mahalo, Wendy. Up next, I'm going to go with A'a with KITV4.
So there have been reports that landlords are prematurely evicting their tenants to go with the FEMA program. Maybe, I don't know if Administrator, you could possibly address that.
So the question is regarding updates on landowners evicting those staying to instead go with the FEMA program.
Yeah, thanks for raising that question because we've heard that same reports. And I just want to make sure that it's clear that we are not dealing with tenants or landlords that are doing that. If we find that one of the landlords has done such a thing, then we will cease business with them. And if anybody is experiencing that, I highly encourage them to reach out to the Attorney General.
Follow up, A'a, or are you okay?
That's good.
Okay. Brittany with Civil Beat.
Yes, thanks. When can Lahaina residents who lost their homes re-inhabit their properties, whether they're hoping to reconstruct a home or whether, there's a camp of folks who wish to park a trailer on their property or a tiny home and start living there immediately, even if all the utilities aren't hooked up? When can that happen?
So the question is around when is the soonest that residents can return to their properties?
Thank you for that. That can happen when infrastructure has been deemed to be not only repaired, but safe. You've heard EPA talk about that challenge we have right now. We are still doing the needs assessment. We're still doing, not the needs assessment, the assessment of the lines, the sewer, as well as the water. So as long as it's unsafe, we won't be allowing people to go back into their properties. But believe me, we want people to get back there just as quickly as they also want to get back, which is why we're hoping the modular home temporary program will be of help, because once it's deemed safe and there is infrastructure, we will encourage people to move those modular units to their properties while they're deciding how to build back permanently. So I think it really depends on the infrastructure and the safety, of course, of the area.
Mahalo. Up next, Mahealani Richardson, Hawaii News Now.
Thank you. This question is for the mayor. We've heard stories of people from West Maui who are now forced to move because they just can't afford it given the crisis. Is it considered a failure in government when a family has to move from the land that they love?
So the question is around West Maui residents having to move due to affordability.
Yeah, the last thing we want is for anybody to move. We don't want people to sell their properties. We don't want people to be taken advantage of by those who come in to try to do that during their time of need. So from government's perspective, we don't want anyone to move. We think that's sad, and we hope when we are able to rebuild that our people will move back and come back here. There's several ideas we have, including land trust and other areas that we think we can do to help hold off people having to sell their properties or move. I think what's sad are all the people and the predators that come and take advantage. I think that's the bigger failure for our community, is to have those kinds of folks come into our town, take advantage of people who are in the most vulnerable condition. I think that's really the sadness.
Do you have statistics in terms of those predators? How many have actually picked up land, and do you have statistics on how many people who've actually left Maui?
I don't have a number for you, but I know that we can get that information because that's what's been reported as well.
Yes, to that point, and it still persists in our emergency proclamations, it is a crime now to approach a local family and to try to coerce them to sell their land. We, in fact, made it a crime to even approach a Lahaina family that had been displaced, which would carry with it a penalty of up to a year in jail and a $5,000 fine for each and every offense. So anyone who tried to move on property that way, it would be a criminal act. Going forward, we know how long it will take to fully rebuild the community because that's the prerogative of the people of Lahaina. And so we'll do everything we can to accelerate that build and make other options available here on Maui so that people can, if they have to bide their time, can stay and then transition to permanent housing again.
Mahalo. Next question, Max Rodriguez, KHON2.
Thank you very much. This question's for Mayor. Just curious, with the removal of the debris, using all that heavy equipment, trucks, has that put a pause in other county projects or any other private developments?
The question is around whether or not the debris removal process has delayed any other county projects.
So these are being done by private contractors and of course the Army Corps of Engineers. So these are not being done by any county employees or county equipment at this point. So there isn't any of that. But what I will say is what we know from many other communities that have gone through debris removal is the impact on our roads with the the trucks and the equipment that's on there. So of course that's something we're mindful of and preparing for as we continue to increase the volume of traffic through the trucks and the debris removal.
Mahalo. Our final question is from Dan Nakaso, Honolulu Star Advertiser.
Thanks, LaDon.
You're welcome.
I want to follow up the Governor and Mayor Bisson on comments you made about mental health. Is it possible to quantify just what an enormous task that is? And secondly, have you had mental health experts coming to Maui to help out? And if so, are you able to quantify that as well?
So Dan's question is around the mental health crisis that is occurring and some details from the governor and mayor.
Well, first, thank you for that. Much of what we know has come to us directly from the community. As you know, I have a Lahaina advisory team made up of 6 members of the community that report back to us pretty frequently, well, daily, and of course, immediately. So that's where most of the information has come from. So yes, there have been, thanks to the governor and his Department of Human Services, they have been putting together a program to help us. But over time, there were different organizations, Native Hawaiian organizations, nonprofit organizations coming to Maui, going to the various hotels and working with our folks that are staying there. I don't have numbers for you. I can get those numbers for you though, as to how many people have been impacted. But you can assume it's every single person who is at the hotels. Every single one of them has been impacted to varying degrees. But what's been hopeful and helpful is that having experts come here, whether it's a Ho'oponopono practitioner, whether it's people who are doing lomi and massage that are helping people through whatever they're dealing with, and then of course counseling. I think I should also mention FEMA, their workers, as well as Red Cross workers at the hotels. I know whether they're trained to do it or not, have also been reaching out. Red Cross has a check-in policy that I know aggravates a lot of our folks that are in the hotels. It really does, because they have to check in so frequently. That's actually a wellness check, because there are people that'll just leave without letting anyone know. We don't know what people's struggles are, so it's a check-in, and the first thing they ask them is how they're doing. So that's, I think, a more proactive step than waiting for someone to come and to come to them. For a lot of people, they're shy, or they're embarrassed maybe to come forward to say something. So I think it's positive that folks are going to them and reaching out to them. But I'm sure Governor has
Trying to give some lomi to.
Yes, go for it. Yeah, he's an expert. Yeah.
The mayor's right. There's been a lot of resource brought to bear because every single individual that was living in Lahaina suffered a traumatic injury. Some families who lost a loved one had even greater loss and greater struggle. A couple things that have been done to help augment the services. For instance, we lost a clinic. We lost the Kaiser Clinic here. We had a lot of individuals then also go to Maui Memorial for both burns, injuries, and mental health care. To partner with the mayor's team and the circumstance on Maui, we're already launching a process to forgive the loans of healthcare workers in the state of Hawaii. That program was due to launch in August. Instead, it launched quietly a month later on September 9th. And what it's done is it's provided scholarships for 585 healthcare professionals across the state, loan forgiveness for anyone from social work to psychology, primary care to psychiatry. And what we asked our team to do, and they did immediately, was pivot the Scholars Program to provide more behavioral health services. That means mental health care and drug treatment. We have seen persistent issues with suicidal ideation, with depression, with self-harm, as we always do, but we worry more in the circumstance of a tragedy like this. We are going to make sure that not only do we deliver the healthcare services, we're going to do another 600 to 700 of these scholarships later this coming summer, again with a focus on Maui and behavioral health, but we're also going to make sure we track all of the health trends through the Department of Health and through the team over at the university. So we don't want anyone to wait for care, as Mayor said. They should get it the moment in real time that they need it. But we're also going to be looking at this because, as many of our federal partners have shared, this is like a decade-long experience, not unlike 9/11, when people for year after year after year still needed support. They may get housed, but the trauma persists. So all of that has been brought to bear. Plus, our state has developed a trauma-informed health team to go to any department that needs it. And they've been here on the ground for much of the time since the first day of the fire.
Can I follow up with a question? Sure. Governor, the loan forgiveness program, were you pleased with the number of healthcare workers that were Maui-based to, especially mental health, to be able to take that debt?
We are. This is going to provide providers the ability to stay in Hawaii in general for their entire careers, but we're focusing more on the neighbor islands and first and foremost Maui and Big Island as it played out. We received an additional $5 million to support rural communities from Mark Benioff and his foundation. When he saw the need, he basically doubled our capacity to help neighbor island and underserved communities. So that's in the spirit of what you've heard earlier today. We've got the federal, state, and county responses, but the philanthropic community also weighed in, and that was one that not a lot of people knew about. That doubled the number of healthcare providers that could come in and stay. These are providers that will hopefully stay for years in our communities. We've had a statewide problem with housing. We've had a statewide problem with healthcare. We're hoping to really crush those problems now in the wake of the fire.
Mahalo nui, ya kako. This formally concludes our news conference. Mahalo.